Hello and welcome to DUI's banner review for August Flash 2024, the last summer banner for this year. So if you guys aren't aware, this is the final banner where new summer characters are released. So is this banner worth sparking? Well, let's take a look at all the units first. So with this banner, we get Galleon Summer, we have Nier Yukata, and we also have Yukata Aglovale as well. Let's go backwards today. Let's talk about Aglo first. So Aglo joins the fire element, and he has some very close similarities with some of his other versions as well. So let's take a look at his kit. The main thing he does is that he has some crest mechanics. So this particular skill here is very simple. It's a 3-hit fire damage nuke, and it supplements everybody's skill damage as well. And it gives a fire crest to Aglo himself. If you have the third skill in effect, then the hit number increases to 6. So it's a skill nuke that does more if you have his buff up, pretty standard. Second skill, also very standard, does 5 hits, but mainly this has a defensive component as well, which is the Veil and the Dispel Cancel. Both are one-time only, and you get the Dispel Cancel only if you have the S3 up. Again, quite simple stuff. And then finally, this S3 is where things get a little bit more interesting. Basically, this gives Aglo a buff. His damage is supplemented, he has stamina buff, and he also has double strike for 3 turns. When you click the skill, he will also attack without using up a turn, so he has a self-tag team effect, obviously very nice, and it also ends cooldown for his other skills. Now, most notably, this skill actually can't be used on turn 1. As you can see here, it says ready in 5 turns, so you gotta wait a little bit before you are able to use this. But one thing here is that this initial lockout and the cooldown can be reduced through his second passive here. So you can see here, whenever Aglo gains a Hellfire Crest, 1 turn cut to this skill's standby and its cooldown. So he gets a crest from this particular skill, and if you have any other Hellfire Crest characters on your party as well, they will also reduce this initial lockout as well. And then you can also see that this particular passive has a second component where if he has 5 crests, then he consumes all of them to deal 1000 fire damage, Dispel, and then he also gets instant CA. So he does this sort of big nuke at the end once he gets a 5 Hellfire Crest. Very cool thematically. And then finally, his S1, which is, I think, his most significant passive, is that he doesn't gain charge bar on normal attacks, but in exchange, he activates his first skill on normal attacks. So an auto nuke, which is quite nice. I think Aglo looks to be a decent full auto character, a skill damage based one. I don't think he'll see much use outside of that. I don't really see a place for him in Manual Burst, especially with some of the other fire characters that are currently meta. And also in HL, I don't think he brings enough utility. He doesn't have any debuffs, he doesn't really have an accessible Dispel, and not much defensive utility as well. These are nice, but not really what you want for HL. So I think Aglo's main use case will be for full auto, but I do think he'll be a really fun full auto character. Lots of skill damage, lots of auto nukes, and this double strike effect here. I think he'll be doing a lot of numbers, and it's going to be quite fun. All right, next, let's talk about Nier. So Yukata Nier joins water, and just like Cygame said, she shares some similarities with her dark kit. The main thing here is her auto nuke, in my opinion. So this here is 6-hit water damage to a foe. This particular skill is significant because it is auto-activated through her passive over here. And basically how this thing works is that this particular skill gives her this buff called Life Sap, and this buff goes all the way up to 13. She gets this stack through multiple ways. This skill gives her 1, this skill gives her 3, this skill here consumes 6, and then she also gets 1 whenever she drains a foe's HP. So a couple different ways to get it. And the main use for those stacks is obviously to use it with this particular skill here, and also if she has 13, then this skill will also consume 6 as well to increase the number of hits you do. It goes from 6 hits to 13 hits. Now, the other important thing about this particular skill here is that it does a 1-turn cut to water allies debuff durations. And this is significant because this skill is cast really often because it's auto cast over here. When Nier drains a foe's HP, she gets that 1 life sap like we talked about. But when she has 6 life saps at the end of the turn, she will auto-activate this. Basically, Nier auto-activates this at the end of the turn in my experience most of the time. And that essentially means that any debuffs on your water team is always cut by 1 turn. And that obviously is very useful. Currently, there's no raid where this is quite impactful in, but in somewhere like Guild War Full Auto, I can see this being a strong niche at the very least. Alright, her second skill here is very straightforward. It's just a hit to defense and water defense, and then it also gives her 3 life sap stacks. Alright, and then third skill here. Like I said, it consumes 6, so you need 6, but luckily she starts the battle with 6, so you can immediately get this at the start of the battle. She gets double strike, it's a 1-turn double strike, and then she gets all these buffs here, which she shares also to your water MC. This stuff here, it's all pretty standard stuff, but most notably, it also gives her drain, which we know is quite useful for this particular passive, because when she drains a foe's HP, blah, 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 she does her stuff, right? And then finally, we have a second passive here, which is Water MC and Nier's defense are increased based on how low their HP is. So this is a garrison-like effect, like the weapon skill. And the most significant thing here is that it also takes effect when Nier is a sub-ally. So there is a bit of a niche there. I don't think this particular sub-skill is too useful at the moment, but maybe in the future it might have some use. I didn't mention this, but her Ogi also here restores everybody's HP, so she has a bit of sustain, and it also activates twice when she has her S3 buff, like these things over here. So overall, I think Nier is really looking to be, much like Aglo, a full auto character. Currently, like I mentioned in permanent content, I don't think there is anything too noteworthy, too significant where you can place her in. Like, sure, you can put her in your Wilnas full auto, sure, you can probably put her in your Artum or your Colossus as well, but I don't think she brings anything too noteworthy to those. Not a bad unit at all, but I think her main niche will be probably Guild War Full Auto if the boss does a lot of annoying debuffs. Debuffs which you can't reliably veil, and instead Nier will just continuously cut their durations and make it so that they don't last for a very long time. Alright, and then finally, let's move on to Galleon. So Galleon joins the wind element. I remember talking with chat, my Twitch chat, which element this character would be in, and I was hoping Galleon would be wind, but I honestly thought Aglo would be wind, seeing as we hadn't got a wind seasonal yet this year, but I'm very happy that Galleon ended up being wind, because her kit does look decent in some burst applications, which is what I'm most excited about. So let's take a look at her kit. So let's take a look at her first skill first, because this is, in my opinion, her most important ability. So these particular buffs, attack is boosted. This is 30% perpetuity attack, 100% triple attack rate, and then a whopping 30% normal attack amp. So very, very good numbers there. But on top of that, so these first 3 last 5 turns, as it says, but these 2 things are both 1 time only, 1 hit and 1 time. I know it says 1 turn, don't get confused. It is a 1-hit assassin, like it says over here. So the bonus damage is a 100% echo 1 time, and the assassin is a 50% assassin modifier for 1 hit as well. So this particular skill is looking to be pretty good for very short burst rotations. So things like EX Plus with its high HP now, and also NM90. Now, that being said, it's probably only for very invested grids, and I'm not entirely sure how it will do in things like Magna, but do keep an eye out for tests coming in the future. Alright, second skill here, very straightforward, does wind damage, and it also places 2 debuffs on the enemy, hit to defense, and a supplemental damage taken. Very, very nice stuff. And then finally, her S3 is a defensive utility, a 100% defense up, a 1000 mitigate, and to MC, it gives an extra buff if she has her own Gold's Love, which I'll get to in a second. It gives 150% defense up and 1500 mitigation instead. So these cooldowns are quite long, but they are very potent skills. Now, much like many Earth characters and Galleon herself, she does cut her skill cooldowns upon Oging. So on her charge attack, she will do unworldly wind damage, and she will cut her skill cooldowns by 1 turn. This is 12 turns once you level her up, so each time it will go down by 1, and then this is 12 turns. So still very long cooldowns, but at least there's a way to lower them. The most significant thing here, however, is that she gets this Foundation of Prosperity effect when she charge attacks, which is also given to her at the start of the battle over here. Foundation of Prosperity at the battle start. Now, this particular buff is really strong, and basically it makes it so that Galleon, when she normal attacks, does a huge amount of damage. So this particular buff, it gives Galleon for 3 turns, triple attack 100%, normal attack amp 60%, and then it also gives her 50% echo. So for 3 turns, she gets these effects. She doesn't get any charge bar gain upon normal attacks, but if she doesn't attack, so after 3 turns, she'll not attack. So at the end of the 4th turn, she will get instant charge attack. So the next turn she'll charge attack, and then she'll get the buff again for 3 turns. Overall, looking to be a pretty strong full auto character as well. And on top of that, if she doesn't attack, you activate her second passive here, which is at the end of the turn, if a wind ally didn't attack, she does a wind skill nuke, and on top of that, it will dispel. And if you have more allies who don't attack, so if you have someone like Esther Riola on your team, then she will also do more hits. It won't do more dispels, but it'll do a bigger skill nuke as well. Alright, so Galleon overall is looking to be a really solid burst character for really short rotations like NM90 EX+, like I mentioned. Whether we see her for anything higher, we'll have to see. But I do think she also has a use case in full autos where you need that dispel, and particularly right now, she might also be useful in Siegfried, because you can put her plus Esther on your team, and that's basically 2 dispels at the end of every turn, right? Which means for Sieg, you want to hit 3 dispels, so you just chuck in 1 extra character who has a dispel. So that could be someone like Freya, that could be someone like Mirren, there's Lich, there's a lot of characters. Vampy, Lich and Vampy I think are a little bit sus just because you don't want to delay as much, but they might still work out, so give it a try. But what this means is that you don't actually need Xion or Friday anymore to do Sieg full auto, so that's quite nice. And outside of Sieg, I still think she'll be a decent full auto character. I'm not sure if her damage will keep up with other meta characters, but I think she'll be a really fun character. She does like really big auto attacks, and then she does a really big charge attack. And during those turns, she only takes 1 turn where she doesn't do anything. But even on that turn, she'll still do a skill nuke at the very least. So overall, I think she'll be fine to use in full auto. But as mentioned, I do think her main use are those short burst normal attack rotations. All right. And then before I go into my banner recommendation, let's look at her weapon, because Galleon's weapon is not only just adorable, but it also is Wind's Tempering weapon, which is a skill that boosts damage cap, skill damage cap, and it also supplements your skill damage. So this is essentially a premium version of Iwia's Beak. Iwia's Beak is a farmable weapon which you can get from Iwia. It's right here. And it's this particular weapon here, which does a very similar thing, but it is a non-boostable skill supplemental, right? And that's pretty much what Wind has been using in full autos and HL raids. But now we get a gacha version of it. And pretty much just like other gacha versions, like Kuvira Pasel, which is Summer Kuvira's weapon. And we also have things like Knight of Ice and Fadil as grand weapons. Just like those ones, I think this weapon will be niche. Obviously, it will be best in slot in some of these teams, like especially for full auto, but it's never going to be something you hard require. For the most part, you will be able to replace it with a free-to-play option like Beak. But if you do want to min-max and you do happen to have multiple copies, it is something you can consider, but only if you're fully invested Zephyrus mains. I would not bar this otherwise. In fact, even when I get this, I might not bar this myself, even as a Zephyrus main. Do keep that in mind. It's not a bad weapon, but it's very situational and quite niche. And it's a hard sell to bar, especially when we have the free-to-play Iwia's Beak available, this particular weapon. So yeah, something to mention, but not too noteworthy to talk about in my opinion. All right, and then finally, we also have a couple raid ups on the banner. We have Alexiel and her weapon Mirrorblade Shard, and we have Sandy and World Ender. So let's talk about Alexiel at the moment. So Alexiel as a character currently is unfortunately very bad, but she does have a full limit break, so a 5-star uncap coming in the very near future. So if we take a look over here, on August 27th, we get an Alexiel 5-star uncap. So maybe with this uncap, she'll be good. Only time will tell. But as of right now, Alexiel not very good. Her weapon, on the other case, Mirror Blade Shard, is a niche raw attack damage option for your grid, both for Titan, and if you happen to have this weapon fully uncapped, you can also use it in your Magnet grids. You want to use it with Attack Awakening, but once Exalto weapon comes out for Dirt, the primal version that is, I don't think you'll see this weapon at all in Titan grids, and in Magnet grids, you might see a one-of as your normal attack option, like I mentioned. And World Ender, just like how we were talking about Galleon Float earlier, is your skill supplemental weapon for Titan grid. Again, it's a premium option, but in this case, Earth doesn't actually have a free-to-play skill damage supplemental weapon. So World Ender has a nice niche for Titan grids. At the moment, it is used sometimes for HL grids, and it is used main hand if you don't have hunting, but for the most part, it is a niche weapon. So both weapons here aren't super vital for Titan grids. And then finally, about Sandy himself. Sandy, at the moment, is mostly used for Titan full autos for null element raids, so things like Ultimate Bahamut HL. And he also can be used for things like Bub's full autos, where his S3 can dispel all those annoying buffs that Bubs puts up at 50%. And in fact, you can even use him off Ellie. So in my water full auto Bubs team, he just comes in at 50%, he clears all the buffs, and then he dies and Hastelia comes in. So he has some off-element usage like that, but ultimately a very niche character. So nothing too noteworthy there. All right, so should you spark this banner? I think there's a couple things to consider here. Firstly, if you want any of these three characters, you should spark, because they will not, or they will unlikely be sparkable on 6% again. If they come back, they will most likely be on 3% banners. So if you want one of these three, getting them now is the best time to grab them. I also think that this banner is a decent spot to spark any missing Flash Grants. So for example, let's say you're missing Zeta and you really want her. This is a decent opportunity to spark Zeta and get one of these seasonals along the way. And since other summer characters are in this banner as well, like Yukata Vampy, Raziel, they're not raid up, but you still have a chance to get them. It makes this a decent banner to spark any missing Flash Grant. But there are other Flash banner coming up in the year as well that are notable. So we have in October Halloween Flash, and then in December we also have Christmas Flash. So those are some other banners that you can consider sparking those missing Flash Grants on. Obviously we don't have information on what those characters or what they'll do, so it's just pretty much a informed decision that you'll have to make based on how much you want these characters or other summer characters at the moment. The other thing to consider at the moment is the looming possibility of the Earth Exalto, the Earth Grand character coming out before Guild War. Guild War for Earth is early September, which means that the only gala left between now and then is August 31st. Cygames has had a trend of releasing new Grand characters for their respective Guild Wars before the Guild War. So that's led a lot of people, including myself, to believe that there will be the Earth Exalto coming out on August Legend. Now, do note that this is nowhere guaranteed. They have not confirmed this, they've not said anything, it's just a prediction. But if you are an invested Dirt main and a Titan player who wants to stay up to date on your grids, probably waiting on this banner and waiting for that Exalto Earth banner is better, because getting that raid up on the Exalto weapon, which you'll need probably 3 of in your grid, is extremely important. But that being said, it is a grand weapon that you can spark any month from that point onwards. So this banner, I think if you're not an invested Dirt main, is a little bit higher priority, just because the characters are much harder to get and they are seasonal characters. All right, so with that out of the way, I think that does it from me for this video. Hope you guys are enjoying ROTB and you've recruited Shushuko. If you haven't, you should do it. She's a decent character. She looks pretty good, pretty solid glass cannon-y sort of character. And her fates are really fun too. If you guys are curious about when I will be sparking, that will be on Sunday, which is the 18th. And my spark will probably be happening around 11 AM GST on Twitch. Links in the description below. I'll upload that spark to YouTube as well if you miss it, so don't worry about it if you can't catch it live. All right, anyways, thank you so much for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed. Best of luck if you're sparking, and I will catch you guys later. Goodbye. Bye-bye.